On Wednesday, February 6th, CPS, Chicago Public Schools, is holding a school utilization hearing. These are hearings that they're holding all over the city. I think there's about maybe 40 of them approximately. So they are claiming that the point of this hearing is receive community input on which schools they should close. We really see this, the community as a teacher, community member and teacher, as really a farce. I mean, a setup so they can state, you know, we have community's input, we listened during all these hearings, and now we created this list that really was not just created by us, but really created by the community. But what we've seen from previous years, they held community hearings last year also, and even with community hearings, with pretty much every single person in the room stating we do not want our schools closed. The rooms were packed, there were big protests, and they still closed and turned around 17 schools. This year, we're way more organized. The hearings are packed. There are people outside of the hearings, you know, banging on the doors to get in, and you can really see there's a very strong community presence, really after our strike. Right when you walked in, you could immediately feel really the frustration and the anger of the community, of the students, of the parents, and it was packed. I mean, the entire hall, I would say, had approximately 500 people. They had to fill it up with extra chairs. People were lining the side walls, and when it came close to starting, there's still lines and lines of people outside. And they wouldn't let them in, which was another big issue. They had obviously were not ready to hold this to such capacity. I don't know if that's because they didn't realize, you know, all these members would come out, or they planned it this way.
Tell me, how many parents were you expecting? 5? 100? 0. It's obviously that we care about our children, we care about our schools, and we care about our community.
But basically they had overflow rooms, which I heard had a few hundred people, and there were also lines of people surrounding the room, banging on the doors, saying, "Let us in." And eventually they had cops come with bikes, basically blocking the doors. They said for our safety, although they were blocking the doors. It didn't seem too safe. So the meeting started, and I've heard from other teachers and parents who've been to the meetings previously that they usually start with a big PowerPoint, and it's basically a spiel trying to have the community understand why they must close these schools. But they didn't even start with this. I think part of this is because of the massive amounts of people and the presence in the room. But in previous hearings, people demanded that the community could speak, that the teachers and everyone could speak, and they didn't want to hear these PowerPoints because we know what CPS is going to say. And a lot of it is lies, you know, and a lot of it is just their propaganda to really convince the community that we should close these schools, that they're underutilized. And as a teacher, you know, I know even my school is considered a little underutilized, I think 9%, and yet we have classrooms of 38 students. So I can only imagine in some of these schools where they're saying they're significantly underutilized, you know, there's kindergarten classrooms with 30 students. And so if you don't have these classes jam-packed, then they state that you're underutilized. So that was a big reason I think the PowerPoint didn't happen. And usually after this PowerPoint, they give people about, you know, maybe 30 minutes for public participation to speak, and then they try to break everyone off in these breakup rooms. Really just, I think it's a divide and conquer kind of method. So they can divide the parents from the teachers and students, and they can try to convince the parents that their community schools should be closed. But at this hearing, this also did not take place. They didn't even try. They had the signs set up with the breakout rooms, and they knew that we wouldn't have it. So the entire 2 hours, maybe a little over 2 hours, was just really spent with the community members, parents, teachers. There was even students as young as, I think some were maybe 8 years old, speaking up for their schools. There's not one person there who wanted their school closed.
Like my classmates said, there's many memories in Madero that I own. But if you close down my school and shove me into another school, I'm pretty sure I'm going to give up. I'm going to give up on myself. I'm going to give up on myself and simply drop out.
A group of boys, I think it was, at these schools that know that their school might be slated for closure. And they were really crying out to the panel at the hearing and stating, you know, if you're closing our school, and you're giving up on us, why should we care? Why should we keep fighting if you're just giving up on your school? You're not putting more resources into our school. You're not putting more teachers. You're just immediately closing it.
I don't want my school to be closed down just because he hasn't experienced what I've experienced. My parents have been here for 7 years working hard for me so I can have a better future.
I mean, some of the children were crying. It was really this moment. I mean, I've seen these hearings, but it was powerful. And to see these members, they're not necessarily board members, maybe there's one, but these people who work for CPS just sit there stone cold, you know, where they're having these parents and children, you know, cry for their schools, just either looking angry or with a scowl or uninterested even, you know, maybe even on their cell phones for 2 hours is just, to be honest, pretty disturbing that these are the people who will be making these decisions for our schools.
I was at the school closing here for Marshall High School, and I saw people kind of with the same expressions that you guys have, which is disinterested, apathetic, like you're really not listening. Sometimes my school closing can be a fraud. They're going to give you the illusion that you have community input, they're listening to you, and then they go ahead and they close the school anyway. We know so that. What is the point of that? The only way this is going to work is if you listen and you put a halt on these. Some of these schools on this list, they have too many students. What are you going to do? Close down a school and send it to a school where there's too many students and have 35 kids in a class? And then you're going to say that they're underutilized because you have a special ed class with 15 kids in it instead of 35. You're basing a ratio on 35 kids in a class. That's stupid. Also, when you take one kid from one school and you put him in another school, and there's increased violence in the city in case someone hasn't noticed, then you are also putting those kids in danger. You're disrupting the communities. What is this chaos? This meeting is chaos. You couldn't even plan the meeting right. You can't even plan the meeting. How are you going to effectively plan to move these kids from one school to the next without getting jumped by gangs and being overpopulated in huge classes? Or do you care?
It was brought up, if this meeting is chaos, you can't even plan a hearing. How can you plan a school closure? How can you plan to shuffle these kids to all these other schools or get these other teachers, get them jobs? So, you know, again, we do not trust CPS. We do not trust their ability to do this correctly.
We teach our children that education is important. We, the parent, can't stress enough about how important it is. So when the kids hear that their schools is going to close, there goes hopes and dreams.
The CTU, Chicago Teachers Union, came out with a study called the Black and White Study. And there's a map showing where all the school closures and turnarounds have been. And it is significant proportion, majority have been in African American neighborhoods and also some Latino neighborhoods. So this is a race issue. It's affecting also the teachers. We've lost over 40% of our African American teachers in the past about 10 years. So, you know, it's not only affecting the students, it's affecting the teachers. So we've seen this throughout the hearing. The parents are really seeing the racism of it because ones living in these communities, they see all their schools closing. And yet on the north side or in schools of wealthier neighborhoods or schools in more white areas, their schools aren't closing. So these school closures have been majority south and majority west. So it is really a race issue also.
Rosa Parks fought to keep from going to the back of the bus. Women fought to have the right to vote. Martin Luther King fought for civil rights. Civil rights are those rights which are considered to be unquestionable, deserved by all people under all circumstances, especially without regret of race, creed, color, or gender. Our children have the right to have their school Paderewski not closed. When will CPS stop putting dollar signs before our children's education?
In November, there's actually a non-binding referendum placed on the ballot for an elected school board. And it really won overwhelmingly. It was over 80% of people supported a Democratic elected school board. So currently we have a board that is appointed by the mayor. So basically Rahm Emanuel has complete control over the Board of Education. And people are really upset about that. They are not listening to the community, and with these closures and turnarounds, even when the community's chanting and everyone is saying, the aldermen, that we do not want these closures or turnarounds, the Board of Education still closed and turned around these schools. So there's been a big push, really, to get this elected school board. I think it's going to continue because we know as long as we have this appointed school board that has people that don't even have their children in our public schools, we're going to have a lot of big problems.
Who are you to come out of the sudden and try to close our schools down? You should be working with us to make them better, not close them down. Where's Rahm Emanuel? He wants charter schools. Where is he now? He's pushing charter schools. He should be here telling us from his heart to our faces why he wants those charter schools. Why is that so much better than CPS? Seriously. Our children deserve an education. Education should be equal for all the children. Equal! Okay? I am a single parent with 4 children. I'm going to tell you right now, I will not have money to pay for all of their uniforms, okay? To pay for their tuition to get into the charter school. Because I don't make enough to make my rent, feed my children, okay? And still send them to school. What, we're gonna have them get baby on the street? Because I gotta go to work. Or is public aid gonna be supporting me the rest of my life? You guys have all your kids in private schools, I'm assuming, right? Raise your hand if your kids in a charter school, come on. Why don't you guys raise your hand and tell me which one's on the CPS? You seem to be young enough to have kids my age. So you got your kids there? No, right? No. But yet what? Guess what? I'm trying to raise future leaders, and that's what we're trying to do right here. Leaders. These kids, these parents, one day, guess what? They'll take your spot too.
So today I've heard that CPS is actually going to release a list stating which schools will not be closed. I think they're really using this as a tactic to divide and conquer. So they're hoping that these schools will be like, I'm not in the list, and there won't be such an uproar. But I think this fight will continue because we know, we're one of the few cities that has this appointed school board, and with our current mayor and probably future mayors, it is really detrimental to our schools.